Hello, everyone. Wanted to put together a video here to talk about one of the facets that I've always found real fascinating in childhood, and that is what we refer to as temperament. This is something that probably can apply a lot to people, especially if you already have kids, because you sort of see this play itself out. First of all, in defining the concept, temperament is best defined really as sort of an infant or toddler child's style of behavior, their behavioral style, okay? And how they act, how they carry on, their personality is what we're really talking about. And one of the things I say about temperament is that it's the primary pattern of how one reacts to one's environment. Okay, that's what we really mean by temperament. How does a child respond to the people around them, the situation around them, and things like that? Are they open to it? Are they not open to it? Are they something else? Which does it tend to be? That's what a lot of that boils down to. Okay. Now the big question here is it hereditary or is it environmental? All right. All things considered, a lot of people tend to think that temperament is really something that's environmental. And the reason they say that is because if you've had two children and you turn around, you have your first child, and you typically make mistakes. There are some things that you wish you would have done differently, and things that you put in the back of your head that when you have your second child, you're going to turn around and do a little bit differently. Okay. In other words, you're putting a lot of emphasis on the idea of environment. And what can happen is that when you have your second child, all right, sometimes, not always, but sometimes they can turn out quite a bit different from the first child, and you haven't even done anything to cause that to occur. Those of you who might be parents know exactly what I'm talking about, all right? Is something hereditary or is it environmental? And believe it or not, when it comes to temperament, there seems to be a lot of biology involved. Now, that doesn't mean that the environment can't influence it, especially in terms of reaction patterns. Even toddlers can pay attention to how moms and dads respond to people, and they can mimic that, and they do mimic that. But that initial reaction, a lot of times, initially in infants and babies, there's a lot of genetics, a lot of biology at play. So, something to keep in mind. In terms of parenting and temperament as far as infancy, I introduce you to two people here, Alexander Thomas and Stella Chess. They both unfortunately have passed away, but these two were some brilliant psychologists who basically did some longitudinal studies. And what studies they were. Doctors Thomas and Chess literally interviewed hundreds of children and their parents, and they did it from a lot of different subcultures. Now, what they would consider subcultures at that time was not just black and white. They had African Americans, Italian Americans, Irish Americans, Asian, what we call Latino. So a lot of the subcultures in there, and they maintained this study to try and determine what the temperament was like of a lot of their children. Now, there were nine main divisions, but they really broke it down into three major classifications of temperament, and that's what we're going to talk about here. In terms of the three types of temperament, the first of which we talk about is what is called an easy temperament. Children who possess what we would call an easy temperament are primarily positive children. They're upbeat children, okay? And they have a positive attitude about things. If you are react to them in a positive way, they will respond appropriately. If you have to make changes to things, they can adapt better than some of the other types of temperament. And basically, they're a generally happy-go-lucky child. Not always. That doesn't mean 24/7, but they tend to smile easily, and overall they're just a positive individual. Children who have an easy temperament tend to eat well most of the time and sleep well most of the time. You're just very blessed to have a child that's open to this. And I have met a lot of children that fall into this category. Hope you have too. Another type is what is called the difficult temperament. Doctors Thomas and Chess spoke of uh, uh, people that basically are infants and toddlers who are frequently unhappy and frequently frustrated. To any kind of new situation that comes along, their normal reaction type is that they withdraw from those situations. All right. They are very, what I want to say, they're just not happy children. They're slow to make any kind of changes. And the truth of the matter is their attitude most of the time is negative. This can be boys or girls. It really does happen. It doesn't mean that they're going to be set this way for life. It doesn't infer that forever they're going to be difficult children and difficult teenagers and so on. But we're talking about that genetic code, especially when approaching new situations, especially in infancy, toddlerhood, and early childhood. Children with a difficult temperament tend to have not so good sleeping patterns. They're just not happy kids. And their eating patterns tend to be the same way. They're just not that organized and structured. And unfortunately, it does show. And then we have what is referred to as the slow to warm temperament. Children with a slow to warm temperament, as the term sort of says, is that they start off negative, mildly negative. They're not as bad as the prior category, the difficult temperament, but they start off negative, just not as bad as what you would see in others. All right. When it comes to new situations, and that's when temperament really shows itself, children like this are unsure. Okay, they don't know. They're very cautious. They may cling to mom, they may cling to dad or other people. They don't know what to make of new situations. Even if you were to bring them into an environment with lots of toys and colors, sometimes these slow to warm temperaments um, are not sure what to make of these things. But with a little bit of time, okay, and positive reinforcement from the parents, from the people around them, they are, as the term implies, very slow to warm, and over time they can become more accepting of these things, and they can handle them quite well in that regard. Now, as far as eating and sleeping patterns, guess what? They tend to do all right when it comes to eating and sleeping patterns, unlike the difficult temperament that struggles with this. Just like the easy temperament, um, eating is good, sleeping patterns is good. There's not a lot of problem with that regard. So there's a plus to that. This one just takes patience. It really, truly does. All right. And the last thing I want to mention, I put all these up here right now. This is sort of what we just talked about at the beginning, but I wanted to reiterate it once again. When it comes to temperament, remember that temperament is a good determinant of reaction to new behaviors. And when it comes to infancy and even toddlerhood, a lot of it is influenced by biology. It's influenced by heredity. So genetics early on. Okay. But what can happen over time is as they get better at these kind of things, you be more responsible, you turn around and be positive, you tend to be supportive, and they can be better influenced by the environment. And so the environment turns around and has better impact in the long run. Once again, there's no guarantee that an easy or a difficult or a slow to warm temperament will mean that the later impact in adolescence and adulthood is going to be the same way. Um, Kids can grow out of this, and they do depending upon the support that they're given. So you cannot guarantee by the behavior you see in infancy and toddlerhood that this is going to be the behavior they will have for the rest of their lives. We see a lot of children who are shy and slow to warm as children when they're very, very young, and as they get older, they sort of grow out of that. So you know what I'm talking about. All right, folks, that's what I've got for now. Hope that helps. Take care.